Joining us on KSFO right now, Rick Tubbs. He is Republican candidate for California's 7th District. This is George Miller's district. He's on the web at ricktubbs4congress.com. And good morning, Rick. How are you?
Morning, Brian. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning.
Well, listen, we've had the opportunity to meet a couple of times. I've met you. I've met your wife. I've met your children. You're a good guy. We know that. You're a conservative guy. We know that. But how in the heck do we get your profile raised so that we can get George Miller out of there? That's the big question.
Hey, well, we start by this morning, Brian, talking on your show. That's going to help. But we are working very hard out here to do just what you're saying. As I go around campaigning in this district, everybody knows there's a problem. Nobody thinks that things are going in the right direction out here. And George Miller, you said it was George Miller's district. It's not the George Miller district. It's the People's District, Brian. It's the People's District. But the people with George Miller being there for 35 years know that he's part of that problem. And they're looking for somebody to take us in a new direction. They're looking for somebody to lead this country to where we need to go. And as I talk about fiscal discipline, my experience in the military, balancing multi-million-dollar military budgets, they start to recognize that I am somebody that can do this. So raising our profile around here is, one, with the message that we have is what people want to hear, some fiscal responsibility, and two, the hard work and getting out, getting our message to the people. And we're going to be doing that every day between now and the election.
Now, you've got a big fundraiser going on Monday, and I'm going to tell our listeners about that in just a moment. We're speaking with Rick Tubbs. He's running for Congress in California's District 7. That's George Miller's district. George Miller's been there for, my gosh, what, 35 years?
That's right, 35 years.
I mean, that's just... He's an institutional Democrat. He's a leftist. I describe George Miller. Here's my way to describe it. Now, Rick, you don't have to comment on this if you don't want to, but I know I'm going to at least get a chuckle out of you. George Miller is essentially Nancy Pelosi in drag. Listen, all of these congressional delegates, Nancy Pelosi is like a mafia chieftain, or as I like to describe her, she's like the house madam. She's running this brothel. It's the Bay Area Congressional District. These are all people that are essentially appointed by her. George Miller is no exception. And we have to, now you can comment on this part. Because I don't want to get you in trouble. George Miller did help write this health care law, and for that reason and that reason alone, he needs to be tossed.
Yeah, and Brian, with him being there 35 years, he's been there 35 years for a reason. People have elected him in there 18 times. And why we can win this time is he has really become disconnected from the people he's representing. And the health care bill is item number one on that. The majority of Americans said no to that health care bill that the Congress and the president passed through backdoor deals that they should have never went to take over a sixth of our economy. This is item number one on how he's become disconnected to the people and how we in District 7 really do feel he is not representing us the way we want to be represented anymore. You talk about the cap and trade that he's behind. You talk about the $26 billion stimulus bill that they just passed, where they actually went and reduced food stamps to pay for this. And, Brian, your listeners don't know this about me, but I grew up on welfare. That's where I started. My life really is the American dream, and if we have a chance to talk about that this morning, I'd love to.
No, I didn't know that about you. Again, I've met you. I knew about your military background. I've met your beautiful wife and your kids. I did not know that part of your story. Rick, tell us about it.
Yeah, you bet. I grew up on welfare, and food stamps is how we ate. And my mother was great with all that she did, but there were nights that I went to bed hungry. And now George Miller and his group, to take care of his special interest supporters, went and put kids in District 7 to bed hungry more often so he could take care of his interest groups and not the most vulnerable in his district. That's another thing that I'm talking about when I say George Miller is disconnected from the people in our district and why people are ready for somebody new.
Rick, I just want to delve into this and ask a few questions about your personal life. Here you are. You grew up a poor kid on welfare. What was the change agent for you, and how did your life really You're a successful guy, so tell us the how you were able to get from the welfare kid to successful man now running for Congress.
You bet. I mean, it starts, with how I was raised. We were raised on welfare, but it was never considered a permanent thing, a good thing. It was always something that we were going to get past. And then I had a dream, and I wanted to be an astronaut. Of all things, I wanted to be an astronaut. So that, you have to do certain things to get there, go to college, all that kind of good stuff. So I did. And when we talk about my life being the American dream, coming from welfare, a one-stop sign town in rural Wisconsin, going to college out here at Fresno State, getting a math degree, joining the Air Force, becoming a pilot. After becoming a pilot, I left active duty, stayed in the reserves, but opened a small business with my wife, got hired by the airlines, and now I'm running for Congress. And all the while raising a family of 3 kids, 3 great kids. And that's the American dream that I'm trying to save for those 3 kids. Because I really think with this debt climbing now at $13.4 trillion, climbing at over $2 million a minute, this debt is crushing their American dream, and I just don't want that to happen as a father.
Rick Tubbs is running for Congress. That's George Miller's 7th district. And again, it's the People's District. George Miller has just been living there as if it's his own for the last 35 years. We'll have more with Rick Tubbs, and I'll tell you some events coming just around the corner so you have an opportunity to meet this great candidate and support him. It's all coming up next on KSFO.
You're listening to Brian Sussman on Hot Talk 560 KSFO.
Rick Tubbs with us on KSFO. He's running for Congress, California's 7th district. That's where George Miller has been camped out for the last 35 years. Rick, describe the district to us because, like most of these districts in California, it looks like an amoeba on steroids. Tell us what this district encompasses.
Sure. I call it 2 cherries and a stem. We're out here in Knoxville where I live. Then it goes up over Fairfield, does not include Fairfield, Green Valley, and then down through Vallejo, Benicia, Concord, Martinez, Clayton, Hercules, Richmond, Pittsburgh, Bay Point, and all along 680 and 80 corridor there. And you really got to go onto the website and look at the map to know if you're in the district or not. It's like you said, it's very difficult to know. There's streets I walk on one side, and it's my district, and the other side isn't in the same town.
Yeah, and they did this. George Miller has been responsible for this gerrymandering because he wants to ensure his incumbency. RickTubbsForCongress.com is the website, and of course, Rick, a guy who grew up on welfare, a guy who ended up getting his college degree, becoming an Air Force pilot, we have to remind you, and then a private businessman as well. I mean, Rick, one of the things that really bothers you and so many people is not just the health care bill, but how we're going to pay for things like the health care bill and how we pay for the stimulus package and our gigantic debt. Talk to us about your solutions for America's economic woes.
Sure. I think after almost 2 years now, the stimulus bill obviously is failing. Our unemployment is going up again. The jobs are not being created. Government money and higher debt is not the solution to our problems. What we're doing right now is jobs. Jobs is a solution to our problems. And I call this thing the 3-legged monster. And this 3-legged monster is chasing our jobs overseas. It's killing American jobs. And it's completely in the control of the government because it's the burden government places on those job-creating businesses. We need to kill that monster. And let me talk about that monster. It's just simply this: too high taxes, too expensive and useless regulation, and too many frivolous lawsuits. Money from our businesses is literally going down the drain in these 3 areas instead of hiring you in a job working for those businesses. That's the first thing we need to do to help get this economy out of the doldrums that we're in, is start giving businesses room, confidence, and stability so they can start growing and hiring people.
Rick, we've got Beverly who's just checking in. Good morning, Beverly and Martinez. How are you? You're on the air with Brian Sussman and Rick Tubbs.
Thank you. I was sitting here brushing my teeth, and I heard this news about Rick Tubbs, and I am so glad to have a Republican to run against George Miller in our district. I am so happy.
Well, you've got to go to his website and check that out because he is a good man. There are people who are thrilled that they actually have an option this time around because I know there have been times when George Miller has run unopposed, Rick Tubbs.
Yeah, and that's something people don't realize. Yes, George Miller wins with the big numbers. You know, he's always seems to be unbeatable, but he's not. We've spent in the Republican Party a total of $19,000 against George Miller in the last 5 elections, one of them unopposed, just like you said.
That's pathetic.
It is, and he is beatable. And what Beverly just said, I run across everywhere I go. I mean, people are literally relieved that I'm running. Finally, somebody, finally. And it's amazing out there.
Hey, Rick.
And even among the hardcore Democrats, they say, we don't like Miller. We just don't have any alternative.
Right. Well, now they've got an alternative and a patriot like you. I know you've got some events coming up this weekend and on Monday. Could you briefly tell our listeners about those? Because I want folks to meet you. I want folks to support you.
Yeah, and like you said, the best place to see all these events as we talk about them today is on my website, ricktubbsforcongress.com, on the calendar. Monday we're having a great get-together in Martinez, right in George Miller's backyard just about. A lot of people out there. That's RSVP, go on the website and call. Tuesday, I've got a debate with George Miller in Martinez. It's for the League of Women Voters.
Good.
Which is a half-hour televised event. Then going into September, we have another debate here in Vacaville at the Travis Credit Union. That's going to be a little bit longer, about an hour. And I'm really looking forward to these events to where people really can compare and contrast. 35-year-old incumbent doing the things the same old way with the same old results, getting us further and further in debt, or this new fresh face in town with new ideas that have worked in the past, whether it's military, business, or personal, and now they can choose between what they want for the future. And then we have this great event here at the Jelly Belly Factory out here with Jackie Gingrich Cushman. And it's a big fundraising event and should be a great time between her and I speaking to the crowd and getting things going. So.
RickTubbsForCongress.com. Rick, please take off the gloves and go after this guy. Somebody's got to do it. You're the man for the job. And let's check in with you soon to see how all these activities go. And I want our people to get out there and meet you, sir.
You bet. I'd love to, Brian, and I will be out campaigning all the time. So we do exactly that. And it's time. It's time for somebody different, and it's time for a new direction. And I'm one of the ones to help lead us that way.
Rick Tubbs for Congress here on KSFO.